Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cosmic Metamorphosis. My name is Kat. Goodness, I'm sorry I didn't get a video off last week. My life has been crazy. I left my last job, and I am now working for another company as basically like a part-time shift supervisor. So last week was my first week, and then I worked today, this morning. So I'm just kind of getting my feelers and seeing if I'm going to like it or not. There was a position that came up in town for a place that I used to work that needs a store manager now. So I don't know if I'm going to apply for that or not. I'm not sure I want the responsibility, but then again, it's a whole lot less to do than what I feel like I'm having to do now. So even part-time. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just overwhelming. I just feel like there's so many overwhelming things right now, not only going on in the world, but in my personal life as well. And I don't know how many of you have been feeling it, but I feel like I'm getting literally like bombarded from every level, from everything, whether it has to do with medical bills or mortgage payments and, things like that. Like everything's bombarding me with issues and problems all at once. And I'm just, I'm ready to just go someplace else in another dimension, that's for sure. So I don't know if any of you have been feeling that too, but man, I'm telling you, I didn't come here for this crap. I really didn't come here for this crap. I want to go home where I don't have to deal with this third and fourth dimension of energy. It's just so thick and heavy and I hate it. So I'm sorry I'm ranting. So today we're going to talk about the information that Alex Colliers gave on April 1st of this year, 2022. Today is the 18th. He did not do a webinar on, I think it was the 8th. So there's a week there that we don't have any information from him. So this is back from April 1st. Hopefully this week I'll be able to get done what he's done this past Friday on the 15th. So we'll see. But anyway, let's get into it. So Alex says, for a couple of years, I've shared with you to get some silver, gold, food shortage, making sure your pantry is stocked. He says, if you are aware, half of the world's population is now under a completely new financial system. And at some point, you will only be able to buy Russian oil with gold. He says China, India, Brazil, Iraq, all going to the gold standard, and we are waiting to see what Saudi Arabia does. He says if Saudi Arabia decides to sell oil with anything other than the US dollar, you will see the US dollar start to collapse. He says it's just what it is and it needs to occur. And not that I want it to occur, he says, but because I don't, he says, but the cabal has to be taken down. He says, if the Federal Reserve note collapses, so does the cabal, and whatever money they've stolen, it will not be transferred and backed by gold because we know who they are. He says it's going to be an interesting ride. He says most of those chickens will be coming back to the US, and we will get into that when we cover the dark night of the soul. Might have to let my cat in because she's meowing, of course. He says, will it happen overnight, or will it take a process of a week to 2 weeks? He says, I don't know. He says, but it's coming. Okay. He said, so whatever you need to do to back yourself up, now is the time to do it. He says here in the US, inflation will go through the roof because as the value of the dollar goes down, prices on everything go through the roof. So these are really sketchy things. He says, we have a very corrupt government, incompetent administration. And if you're here in the US, he said, suddenly everyone wants to hear about Hunter Biden's laptop after denying it existed after the last year and 5 months. He says, we have the finest government money can buy. Of course. He says, we need to prepare ourselves for what follows. So throughout this presentation, we will touch on current events. He says, there's no way not to. Let me let my cat in. Remember my video, kitty. Okay. He says a video of an overview of the ET intervention was done. He says, and I watched it. I know many of you have. I don't think I've seen that one. I'm thinking I know it comes from somewhere, but he says, I've seen the chatter on Knights of Terra. He says, as much respect as I have for the creator of that video, he said, and I have nothing but respect. It was not only one-dimensional, it was incomplete. It's something I need to address because obviously we're in disclosure and most of us have a very good background on what's been going on with the Federal Reserve, the cabal central banking system, etc. He says, we're aware of the royal families, we're aware of the child trafficking, the organ harvesting, the satanic rituals. He says, but we don't know how bad it's been. He says the details about how bad it's been, and I'm not sure how far they're going to go with that. He says, but if they go all the way, he says, we'll be throwing up. Oh, I'm telling you, Tom, oh, dark times are coming. Prepare. He says, but the other ET piece is a very difficult piece to grasp. And the reason for that is like looking through a kaleidoscope. He said, every time you move it, it's just a little bit of the picture changes. He says, even if you bring it back to where it was originally, it's still changed. It's not the same. I used to love those when I was little, looking through kaleidoscopes. He says it's constantly changing. He said the ET perspective is hard to grasp because there's so many different scenarios, stories, and perspectives. He says it's important to remember this. He says up until about 12 years ago, there were 5 different timelines. And he says each of those timelines was similar and different. So there were scenarios going on in those different timelines, and there were contacts going on with different ET groups within those different timelines, you see. So now, as those timelines have been merged in with this timeline, everybody's trying to grasp, how is that true? These things can't be true. Therefore, those narratives are fake. And we know, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I can't read my writing. I'm horrible. Anyway, people will be questioning, basically, like what's going on, what's fake, what's not, like all these timelines have melded into this one. He says you need to understand thoroughly that the information that everyone's been getting, says, and they're getting it from 1 to 2 specific sources. But those sources on the earth are compartmentalized, and they have one perspective, and that one perspective is being shared with them. He said, now, those who are contactees are getting their information from one particular source in most cases, and that information is coming from that perspective, from the source. It's no different with the exception of Elena Denan, who is talking to multiple groups. And again, they all have their own perspective. How this is all going to shake out is not determined by them. Them says, I'll say this again, it is determined by us, by humanity. He says, because this is about us, humanity, it is not about them. He says they're here to assist, to mentor, and to guide or guard. They're not pulling the strings. And at this particular point, humanity is pulling the strings. He says we're caught in the middle of a shitstorm. Boy, isn't that true? And I'm really feeling it right now. It's important to know this and to remember this, because there's so many people being pulled to the right, being pulled to the left. He said being pulled up and down. He says, and nowhere in the scenario are all these sources saying, humanity, this is on you. What is it that you want? What is your vision? What, in fact, are you creating? And while all this is going on, the power structures that have been in place for 1,000 years or longer are being taken down because they're completely corrupt. And they've literally been feeding off of humanity on every level. And they've been controlling and manipulating humanity energetically, psychologically, to create a world in which they are in control and they can feast off of humanity. I want it to end. I do. I'm frustrated. I'm sorry. Like, I know Alex is frustrated. If you follow Project Camelot, Carrie Cassidy, she's really frustrated. I watched a video yesterday with Icons, Sarge, and Elena Denan, and like he was just really frustrated with everything going on, and like just didn't understand the perspective. And you know, most of us just want severe major action, and we just want to go. We just want to go now. We want it gone. We want this stuff done. My whole point is they want humanity to rise up. For me, I'm sorry, but as long as people have to work to pay bills, pay mortgage, pay for their medical, whatever, like as long as we have to go to work to pay for these bills that we shouldn't even be paying and these taxes we shouldn't even be paying, you're not going to have humanity rise up. Humanity, you know, is too afraid to just quit their job, because how's society going to run if you don't have people at grocery stores, you know, people in the medical field until med beds are here. Like, once everyone's debt is paid and people don't have to worry about a mortgage or worry about how they're going to get money for food or how they're going to pay that bill or whatever, once our debt is paid, you will see humanity rise. You will, because they won't have to go to work unless they want to keep busy. That's when you're going to see humanity rise. You watch. Anyway, enough about me. He says, they're giving nothing back. The cabal basically is giving nothing back. They just take, and take. He says, Now, as far as for the ET piece, you cannot explain the scenario. You cannot give an overview without discussing who's here in the fourth density, who's here in the fifth density, who's here in the sixth density. And I talked to a contactee last week who's in contact from those in the seventh density. He said, now, 3, we know third density is here. 4, we know are here. 5, we know are here. 6th being densities or density beings are here. We've heard from the 5th. He said, the 6th density is involved in planning and staging of events of future actions to benefit humanity. He said, I don't know. He said, I don't know. I guess he didn't know if they were here staging the events. He says, are they here to check the work of those who are on the 6th? I don't know. Or basically, I guess it was the 5th dimension checking the 6th dimension beings, checking their work to see how well they're doing. He says it's complicated. There's just no other word for it. It's extremely complicated, and that's the kaleidoscope I was just talking about. He said the scenario constantly changes based on things that are occurring. But what's the common denominator in all these things that are going on? It's humanity. He says we sit squarely in the middle of all their stuff that's going on, and we're being distracted. We're being manipulated. We're being put in what appears to be a no-win situation. We have all sides withholding information from us at this particular time. It says whether it's a white hat or a black hat or a gray hat, information is being held from humanity. He says, and I'm really incredibly frustrated by it. Boy, I am too. Hopefully all of you watching this are too. We're done. Enough is enough. He says, to some extent, I understand the need to classify certain things and actions because this is a battle between good and evil. I get that, he said, but humanity is stuck in the middle. He says, ladies and gentlemen, this is about us. This is about us. He says, this is not about the 5% dark. This is not about the 5% white hats. This is not about 5% gray hats. He says, and this is not about the 5D ETs here on this planet. This is not about 4th density ETs here on this planet. And this is not about 5D ETs here overseeing all the happenings here on the surface or underground. This is not about the planning stages of the 6th density. It says, and whatever role the 7th density is involved in, or the seeders who are coming in, aka the Patal. He says, this is not about them either. Although they're all here because of us, this is about us. This is about humanity, about physical soul groups that are here from every dimension in our universe. This holograph being here now, it's about us. That's why they're all here. He says the merging of timelines is an incredible, complicated issue in manner of closing portals that open and close. Monitoring them is extremely complicated. It takes resources to monitor these things. He said stargates It takes massive resources to monitor these things, because the last thing you want to do is cause a galactic war. But at the same time, their situation cannot continue to spiral into lunacy. It feels like that right now. Oh my goodness. It says, so while all this is going on, we have our stars blasting out an entirely new wave of frequency. Of course, it's not an accident. It's all part of the awakening and ascension process. So we all know that Source is involved in what's been happening here. And of course, Source is totally in control of everything that's going on, because it's all Source. All the dimensions that were pushed out were all part of Source. These different races that are coming here and observing and monitoring and helping and assisting and guarding, they're all learning stuff. Okay, he says, they're all learning as we are. He says about a process that's occurring here. So even though they're more knowledgeable about everything, they're also in school here. We have scientists releasing statements and papers that are about to discover fifth density. That's not an accident, he said. All right. It's not an accident. They're talking about this right now. It's not a coincidence either. Said, so let's get to the heart of this thing, which is us. He said, in conversation with Mornay and Visayas regarding those that have fallen into time from fifth density soul groups, he says, I never shared this before, and I wasn't sure I ever was going to, but because I'm a member of one of those particular soul groups, information was shared. He says, now, I want you to look at the idea that I can only assume that those soul groups on the fourth have gone through a similar process or procedure. He says, I can't speak for sixth or seventh or eighth or ninth or 10th or 11th, but for the sake of argument, let's presume they went through a similar process. He says they would go through a training holographically of what it would be, what it would feel like to be in a third density body and feel the weight, to feel the gravity, to feel the density of their physical form. But the most important training they went through is psychological, because they're spiritual beings and are always connected to each other and connected to their soul of their civilization. And because they're directly connected to Source, the one thing none of them have experienced when coming into the third density situation that we have is ego. It says they never experienced ego, because ego as we know it here does not exist in fourth or fifth or sixth or the seventh. So coming into this realm, their higher self is almost literally forced to take a back seat to a construct called the ego. Now, he says, isn't it interesting that those of you who travel at night, or you project yourself out of your body, or you fly or go to the ships, isn't it interesting your ego doesn't go with you? It's not with you, he said. It's not there. And when you're out in that particular state, there's a feeling of freedom. And I just got chills, because that's exactly how it feels for me when, like I said, I've been on these ships. I've been on where there's lots of people, and I'm self-conscious as it is if I'm in big crowds, but like when you're in that dimension, you don't have that ego. You don't care. Like nothing bothers you like it does here. It's completely different. Yeah, so he says that particular state, there's a feeling of freedom, of liberation, of lightness, of omnipresence that is very, very hard to have here in the physical body because of the ego. He said, so when it came into the physical body, when we are born, we have this construct that is formed, which is a separate part of ourselves, and it literally is a separate part of ourselves. It's in some ways a mirror image, but it's very easily manipulated, and that's because it was put there intentionally. This construct was created in our realm intentionally by an AI. Talk about a near-death experience for humanity is and will be the death of our egos, which many, many people on this planet believe is in fact themselves. They don't know the difference between their ego and their higher self. They don't understand there's a separation. They don't understand that the ego that they believe to be themselves, the physical, is the trigger to everything in our lives, is and was created to control and manipulate humanity. And the stronger the ego got, the further away we came from our higher self, from our spiritual beings here in the physical. He says, now, the awakening is occurring because the AI, in fact, is being taken down. It's being turned off. Those of us who've been on a specific path find ourselves not lamenting that our ego is gone or going away. We are totally cognizant of all the shifts or changes that are going on in the world around us, and we have a higher understanding of what this all represents. But at the same time, we still experience the pulling of the pain and the suffering and the manipulation that's being done by media for the most part, every physical structure right now. There's an element of manipulation going on everywhere. There is very little authenticity that we can see in the structures on our planet, the power structures. There's no authenticity whatsoever. The only authenticity we have is our personal relationships with each other. But even then, the manipulative and artificial construct of the ego can sometimes get in the way and cause and create issues within the relationship and its authenticity because it's easily triggered. Sorry, my cat's playing with her crinkle tunnel. Oh my goodness. Okay. It was created to trigger us into emotion, sorrow, and grief, joy, all those energies that this construct AI could feed off of. Bastards. That's all I can say. God, it makes me mad. I came here for an experience, just like all of you. So this near-death experience that has been shared by white hats is going to be the exposure of the ego by the artificial construct. And it is at this moment that a lot of people are going to realize who they truly are. When all of this collapses, and it's in the process of collapsing, none of this has to do with personal wealth. None of this has to do with how much property you own. None of this has to do with how beautiful your physical appearance is or how not beautiful your physical appearance is. None of this has to do with what a good churchgoer you are. None of this has to do with religions. None of this has to do with how well spoken you are or how well educated you are. None of this has anything to do with any of that whatsoever. Because in the end, when you strip away all of that, it will all collapse. And what is left is you, the soul, who has always been and always will be. That's what's left. That's what's real. That's what's authentic. That part of us that's connected and a part of source. It says something very, very big is being played out on this tiny little planet of ours that dramatically affects the galaxy and maybe other galaxies. Just got chills again with that. I don't know if there's a similar scenario occurring in any other galaxies. I don't know that, he said, but it's happening here. We're right in the middle of it, and it's about us. It says on the other timelines that were created mostly by ETs, one by the Nazis and their experiments, the interesting thing that I learned from the A's is that those other timelines, there was no history. There was no conversation. There was absolutely no attention or energy paid to the spirit of 1776. But on this timeline that we're on right now, it's all about the spirit, the idea of what happened in 1776, a declaration of independence, a declaration of sovereignty. It says, now, when I refer to this, I'm not saying that everyone in the world has to be an American. That's not it at all. America is an ideal, an idea. It's not a place. Yes, it's a physical place, but the idea is not limited to America. It's unlimited to humanity. It's a declaration of independence, a sovereign position, that we are a sovereign race, that we are independent in our ability to think, in our ability to create, our ability to be responsible and sovereign in our ability to take care of each other and to protect each other and to have each other's back. Doesn't matter the country. None of that is significant or put in front of or on top of the sovereignty of the people of this planet. We the people is about humanity. These systems that are going to replace the monetary system, that's coming into place. The government structures that are going to come into place, which will be local governments. He says, ladies and gentlemen, Knights of Terra, which is all of us. If they don't serve the people, he said, trash it before it starts. Let's not create this scenario again. This is about whatever structures we create, that we support, that we have to be adamant, we have to be resolute, that these structures support humanity or they don't exist at all. It has to benefit all of us, okay? We don't give it our energy, we don't give it our power, we give it zero authority whatsoever. We, in fact, must build and create structures that support humanity. It has to be this way. That's why they're here. That's why everybody else is here, because they already have these structures. They do. They already know what that's like. They know what freedom is. They know what responsibility is. They're not robots. They may have androids, but they don't run shit, he said. They perform a service. That's it. The systems don't feed off the people. The system serves the people. It supports them. In whatever consciousness those civilizations want to go, the system is there to support them. Find a need, fill a need, he said. There are no more timelines. We are on one single timeline right now. Okay. So all these other people talking about all these different timelines, blah, 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 blah. Alex says we're on one timeline right now. Says now, there's going to be some confusion about history that's being uncovered because some of our history doesn't fit our timeline whatsoever. In fact, because that history belongs to different timelines. But because of the merging of it, some of that history is lost, and some of that history, for whatever reason, its resonance frequency has attached to our timeline. It says now, the A's have been adamant that Antarctica is the remnant of Lemuria. But now we are hearing that there's Atlantean structures there or technology there. That may be so, he says, but let's not discount the fact we're also going to discover Lemurian structures and maybe technology under the ice in Antarctica. In other words, we're looking at this with a lens of third density. Many people are, says. But if it continues to open our perspective, we will open up to fourth density. We will also see fifth density. The Earth throughout history has had an expression of life on it that is third, fourth, and fifth density. The beings who have come and gone here from those dimensions, who have left a resonant field, who have left a fourth and fifth dimensional portal or portals here that are still in fact open, okay? Says this isn't just all third density. If it was only just third density, how is it that so many soul groups from every dimension in our hologram are here? Because it wasn't limited to just third density. So you cannot look at the history or the narrative with just a third density lens. It's just not possible. You will never get your answers or get an appropriate overview of everything that was about Earth and Earth's humanity. Looking at it with just a third density lens, it's just not possible. It says now, once we remove the ego, or the ego is removed from humanity, and all those prejudices and perceptions and biases and judgments, when all of that falls with the ego, only then will we be able to have an accurate overview of everything on this planet that humanity encompasses, which is 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. And along that goes with that is the cedars, the patal, the source, archangels, and everything else we don't know anything about. It's like somewhere in this kaleidoscope of reality that we encompass, somewhere in one of those little prisms, there is a keyhole. And it almost feels like Source is going to take a key and put it in that prism, and it's going to turn it. And what's going to happen is all these combinations of scenarios are going to vanish. And humanity is going to open up this key that's literally going to change the resonant frequency of our entire galaxy. Wow. It says, at least that's the perspective of the A's. So everything we do here on this planet is going to have a ripple effect towards every other dimension in this galaxy, every other planet. So it is a huge deal, and we want it all to happen now. Sometimes I have to just tell myself, okay, it's in their timing, because again, they don't have time like we do. They don't live in time like we do. And we want everything now, instantaneous. And, it could take months, years, whatever, for something they do in that dimension. Says that is what they're looking at. That is what, in fact, they are expecting. And they realize, as much as they know their presence here, they are also expecting that whatever is going to literally occur here to change their life, their perspective, and the way they experience 5 density and the galaxy and our solar system. Right now, the focus is on the planet itself and on humanity. It's like he said, ladies and gentlemen, we are all gatekeepers. We are all gatekeepers, every single one of us. And I still feel like I'm not explaining it well enough, because there just are not words in the English language for this, he says. The near-death experience that humanity will have will be the death of the ego. And it's coming. It's already in process. The near-death experience, or the dark night of the soul for America, it's going to be when we perceive all of the things that have been done to humanity in our name that we knew nothing about. Humanity is a melting pot of not only different species, but of different dimensions on this planet. America is a melting pot of humanity. That clearly has been led astray, or was led astray. We are now in the process of finding our way back to where we should have been, and it's not without struggle. We're going to have to find our way back to the original idea of what America was meant to be, and that will be a dark night of the soul. A very, very powerful nation, a very, very powerful idea, a very, very powerful energy with so little knowledge of our power. And because we have such little knowledge of our power, we were easily manipulated, and others took over that power and used it not only against us, but also against the world. Those beings, those energies, those soul groups are now being identified. The light is being shown on them so we can see who and what they are. He says, we're there. And as these power structures collapse, we need to depend on each other. We need to go back to the roots. So let me address another issue, he says, I was addressed to share. We're told military is the only way. This is true. At this particular point, this is true. When it comes to the affairs of men, men have to deal with it. When it comes to the affairs of off-worlders, we are getting assistance for that. But when it comes to our own issues, we need to resolve that for ourselves so that we know we learned the lesson and we truly understand in the discovery of those issues and the fixing of those issues and those structures and how it all came to be, so that we have knowledge and it doesn't ever happen again. In other words, we experience the entire spectrum of how it was created, what it was created for, the intentions behind it, and the dismantling of it, and the intentions of why we are dismantling it. So there's ownership across the board with these issues, with the power structures we create ourselves. We also need to become fully aware of the ego and how it was created and how it's been used against us. It says now, and having an individual identity, one doesn't need an ego. We already know that. Each one of us already knows of our higher self level, our own individuality. So it's not like we're going to lose that. It says no. What we're letting go of with the ego is the control mechanism that was made to manipulate us in our every aspect of our life. The ego literally created a false persona, and that's how we've been operated and manipulated, because we've been triggered by the false persona. The construct that was created to manipulate all of us soul groups on this planet, he says, was brilliant. It was brilliant. There's no other word for it. It was brilliant in the way that it was constructed. We reincarnate into this system over and over again with a lack of memory, and what we cling to is the ego. And yes, there's that desire in us because we're spiritual beings. We're soul in a physical form. The integration and creation of religions, as we were drawn to those things, we were drawn to the earth religions, and those earth religions were to somehow facilitate that spiritual need or desire we all have in us. So that construct was also created to fill a specific need. But of course, it was shallow and would never give us the actual nurturing or desire or information or fulfillment we got from source when we were directly connected. The whole reality that was created, the matrix, for lack of a better word, was absolutely brilliant. And know that we're beginning to see that collapse. We were beginning to understand what an incredible facade it was. It says now, at some point, as this thing continues to collapse, more and more people, as they're waking up and they realize who they are going to be asking the question, why us? It was such an elaborate scheme put together and instituted and created in order to capture us. Who are we that they would go to such lengths to capture us? And that's the question we need to be asking. Who are we? That they would put so much energy, so much planning into wanting to capture us. Now, we hear all this stuff in that ET world now, in exopolitics, about hybrid races. There's stories about how 5G was created to sort out or snuff out gray hybrid, reptilian hybrid races, Orion hybrid races. He says, ladies and gentlemen, humanity is a hybrid race. We are a hybrid race. He says, okay, we are the sum total of 22 races. We're a hybrid race. He says the difference is between some hybrid races and us is that we have compassion. We have emotions. We experience empathy. We experience love. We experience sorrow. We have a range of emotions. Says that's nothing short of profound. He says where it gets scary is that there are beings here that have none of that. No emotions whatsoever, no empathy, no compassion, no expression of joy or sorrow, nothing. They're simply mind. That's all they are. Those that are like that, he says, do not belong here. said, let me say that again. They do not belong here. They have to go. And again, he said, they have to go. You can't have beings like that who have absolutely no emotional body whatsoever and put them with those who are all emotion, because they manipulate. And we have to be genuinely honest with ourselves as a civilization that those beings that have absolutely no emotional body whatsoever, they cannot be here, because they will do great harm. And it's not like you can teach them to have an emotional body. They simply don't have one. I don't know if any of you have known people like that. I've known people like that in my life. And wow, yeah. When someone has no empathy, like when you see someone crying and you know, like, I mean, I'm an empath. So if I see someone crying and in pain, like it makes me want to cry and I want to console them, you know. That's just the way I am, because I would want someone to be there for me if, you know, if I needed support. There are beings that just don't, they just don't know how. They just don't. And it's really sad, I think. It's just pure instinct, you know. That's the reptile, just pure instinct. They don't care. It says, now, is 5G set up in order to do that? Question, I don't know. It's an interesting theory. Is 6G? Question, I don't know, because so much is not being shared with humanity. We're not being told about any of this stuff. And it's a sad freaking day, he said, when I have to go to another dimension, another race, to find out the truth about what's happening here. It's like, if you want to find out what's happening in the US, you have to read foreign newspapers because you can't get the truth here. There's something terribly wrong with this. And that's why we're all frustrated, okay? Because we can't get the truth. Nobody wants to tell us the truth, and they think we're children. We can't handle the truth. It says, so there will come a day when all ETs will be off this planet. Boots on the ground, everyone. They will leave. All that will be left will be humanity, ourselves. And at that point, I'm assuming we're going to be told this. It's now just us, and they're going to observe how we live with each other when we're not being manipulated by outside forces and interventions and regressive interventions. He says that day is soon approaching, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I can't wait. And I don't mean like next week. He says it may be just a couple of years away. It may be months away. I don't exactly know. Consciously, we're the ones driving this now. More people awaken, more people raise their frequency, the quicker it will happen. He says, us and Source are driving this process. He says, so we, those of us that are awake, or at least think we're awake, those of us who are empowering ourselves with our own essence, who are doing all the necessary things to hear our own frequency, it truly is time to connect to Source, to get our answers. You know, one of the reasons, he says, I stopped lecturing for years was the death threats. He says, that was definitely one of them. He says the other was I started to have children and I needed to be home and I wanted to be home. He says, I didn't want to be on the road. But another is that when I did the Whole Life Expos and I did the conferences, he says, I did all the other smaller conferences in smaller regional areas. It was always the same people in the first 5 rows. Same people, he said, same faces with their head down, taking notes in their books. Occasionally you'd see a dozen newer people, but they would always sit in the back. He says, now, all my years of talking and doing my own individual research, none of those people I saw in the first 5 rows, nowhere do I see them lecturing anywhere. I don't see them taking a leadership role. This is all of the information I've researched and gathered. There's no sharing of that anywhere. And I came to the conclusion that this was a waste of time. It wasn't until the last 2 years I suddenly began to see some hope here. So Alex, if you watch this, I'm spreading your message, okay? So hopefully more people will do this as well. Get some information out there. You will get followers to follow you. Yeah. He says, now, a lot of people in exopolitics that tried getting this information out from the 50s have been forgotten, and they shouldn't be. There are many people that made many sacrifices who put their reputation on the line, who put themselves on the line from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. He says, to try to share with humanity. He says, look, we are not alone. We never have been. There's something else going on behind the scenes that is far bigger than this horseshit, he says, we call a reality here. He says, of course, they were ostracized, called kooks, nuts. They were attacked. Some of them were murdered because they were getting too close. Many were threatened. Many became sick from the stress. Many of them lost their families or ended in divorce. Whatever happens here in the next year to 3 years, whatever happens to the information shared by all of these people, he says, ladies and gentlemen, do not forget what they did. Do not forget what they gave. Whatever narrative that begins to come to the top, to the forefront, do not forget these people. He says they're veterans. They buck the system. They chose to go in the opposite direction of the herd, and they were right. They were right. Don't forget them. I don't want exopolitics to forget all these people, the Jordan Maxwells, the Bill Coopers, the George Greens, the Carla Ruckerts. I don't want these people forgotten because he says they fucking gave it all. Okay? They gave it all. They put it all on the line, and they need to be remembered. Just like our veterans of wars need to be remembered. Those who died in Vietnam, those who died in Korea, World War I, World War II, they put it all on the line. They fought a different battle than exopolitics. They fought a battle of the mind, a battle of genuine, authentic history. They fought a battle of narratives, and they suffered just as much as anybody else. And he got really emotional during this. He says, just don't forget who they were and what they did and what they tried to do, because it's going to be easy to forget here real soon as everything starts to flip, as the matrix collapses and we move into the next creation of Earth. He says, we cannot forget those who gave, who fought the battles, who tried to change the narratives, who went to war for an ideal only to find out the reason they were there was bullshit, but they were there nonetheless. They gave of themselves. Please don't forget these people, because they're the old timers, the old guard. They're crossing over. They paved the way. They hacked trails out of the wilderness, out of the ignorance. They carved a trail through ignorance for others to follow to where we are now. We cannot forget them. What they did was special. It has meaning. And there are those now building financial careers on their work. If you're going to do that, you better acknowledge them. The information they are bringing forward, they need to have credit for it. They said, just acknowledge them. It's not hard to do. Okay, and then there's a few questions at the end. So first question was, Alex, with arcs being activated, is it possible these arcs will play a role in moving Earth to fifth density? And his answer was, I don't think so. It's my understanding that these crafts that are here are not from fourth or fifth density. They're from third density. I think what it does is it will bring awareness, it'll bring consciousness, it'll force humanity to ask the questions. How did they get here? Where did they come from? What does that have to do with humanity? And of course, that triggers history. That always brings up the historical perspective for people to know what is the history of the human race, which is very important because that will shed light on what and who we truly are. The other is the technology that is still aboard these ships and how advanced it is to where we are today. Can we use them? Can we travel? Can we explore our solar system in these things? Can we truly learn about our home? He says, if there was, God forbid, a catastrophe to Earth or something that's coming, could we use them to get out of harm's way with the turning on these particular crafts? I must have wrote that wrong. Okay. On these particular crafts of arcs, as they are called, did some of our souls come here in those arcs? Did we come here in those arcs? It opens up all kinds of questions and perspectives. But will that move us into fifth density? No. He said consciousness will. Consciousness will. Remember, it's always about energy. Everything is about energy. Next question. In your last webinar, you mentioned transitioning into fourth, fifth density in a flash. Does that physically mean leaving behind our present surroundings? Where we live, will it be the same or will it just be a higher dimensional level? And he kind of giggled and he answered, are you worried about your furniture? Says, I have no idea what the jump from third to fourth will be like, okay? I've had no experience in fourth density in this physical lifetime. I only know about third and fifth. I don't know about fourth. So I don't know what that will look like. Will it happen in a flash? I don't know. Will it be a slow progression? It seems to be what we're going through now until the moment you reach that threshold between the higher third and fourth. And then you just move into it, into another dimension. That seems like a very likely scenario, that at some point it will be gradual and then all of a sudden you'll be in the fourth. Will it look like Earth? I don't know. Maybe it will be like when you die and you leave your physical body and you go into another realm and all of the family members who've crossed over before you are there waiting for you. to welcome you. Maybe it'll be like that. Boom, you'll just flip, that kind of scenario. And those who have left before you are there, but also people you will suddenly remember that you've had other lifetimes with waiting for you as well. And my understanding is that there are incredible joyous moments where you're free of third density form and you are there as an everlasting soul, consciously aware of all things. Maybe it will be like that. At least that's how I perceive it to be. Wow. Yeah, won't that be? I mean, that's kind of how I envision it, is like we're going very slow. We're slowly progressing, but eventually we're going to hit that precipice and we're just going to all of a sudden flip. Or it's like a little grandmother talks about the bobber and how you have, the red and white fishing bobbers, and you're going to have so many people waking up that, it's going to kind of flip and go back, flip and go back, and then all of a sudden it's just going to flip completely. That's how I see it. Next question. When we move into 3D, 4D, 5D, will the time we spend in 4D be a fairly long duration, like 25 years, or will it be a brief moment before launching into 5D? His answer to that was, that's a really interesting question. And I've tried to deal with that question. He said, already you asked your question in the construct of 3D. Measure fourth density doesn't deal with time as we do it. They don't experience time the way we do. 5D, the last thing they think about is time. They're always just in the moment, and those moments go on forever. So I have no idea how to answer that question. Again, not having experience in their lifetime, it's a great question. One I cannot answer because I don't know. Next question. I watched the video with you and Michael Sala from November 2021, and you spoke of the nova exploding in the 1600s. You said the light from that would be here approximately July 2022. Is that still the case? Do you have any more information on that? His answer was yes. Happened in Cygnus Alpha. And you have to understand that distance, it takes over 400 years for that light, those frequencies to reach us, okay? It's not like we're looking through a telescope at a supernova and saying, oh my God, here it is. Those are events that happened in the past. And in the event of what happened in Cygnus Alpha, that was well over 400 years ago, and we're just waiting for that to reach us, okay? It's not real time. Being here on Earth with you, I'm not sure what's real anymore. And he kind of laughed. I don't know what's real anymore either. I feel like half the time I'm just out of my body, and I'm really not physically here. He says that light is supposed to hit us the first or second week of July. And he says, yes, we're waiting on it. Next question. I've heard yes and no that our pets will come with us when we make the jump into fifth density. Will Merlin accompany you? Merlin's his little dog. And he says, well, I hope so. I've had a lot of pets growing up in this particular lifetime, all kinds of pets. I would love to see all of them. Would be nice if someone said, hey, you have this deed to this property and all my critters would be there. I would love to see them again. They were all wonderful. Do I expect Merlin to go with me? No. We'll just have to see, we all love our furry friends, don't we? I believe they are. I've heard that they will be coming with us because if you really think about it, animals, especially our pets, our domesticated pets, they are what I saw a really nice little saying the other day about our pets are just angels without wings. And they are here to comfort us whenever we need that. And they are angels and they love you unconditionally, even though a lot of these animals have been so abused. And, you know, they just love you unconditionally. And I think they are so higher in frequency than we are. So I do believe they are coming with us. Okay. Let's see, I have one, two, maybe four more questions. Next question. I heard about the very high holographic tables in the ancient cavern in Romania from Peter Moon. Each table showing something different when your hand passes over it or touches it. Is this technology of how we will be learning in the future? And his answer to that was, it's very possible. It's very possible that's part of the educational tools that we're going to have. There's also others that the military already has. The Smithsonian has in its basement all the shit they've been hiding. There's also stuff at Fort Meade in the basement that we haven't seen. There's also things in Egypt, China, rooms underneath the Sun Pyramid in Bosnia. That's all kinds of technology. There's stuff scattered all over the planet, not to mention holographic technology or rooms will be given or will be shared with us or brought down to the surface by fourth and fifth dimensional beings, where we will be able to walk through a holographic projection and we will be able to literally move through ancient Egypt, Samaria, Chaldea. We will not be seen, but we will be able to literally move through the bazaars and the streets of these ancient cities as part of our educational process or our generational process to experience what our ancestors, forefathers, foremothers went through. We will be able to literally watch the ancient pyramid wars between Marduk and Enlil, what that all entailed, which Inky went through by Enlil, the Anunnaki thing. We will see the attack on Sodom and Gomorrah by ETs. And this is something we really need to see. And I got chills on this one, is you know what really happened to Moses and who the hell was Jehovah? Because Jehovah was not God. Jehovah is an extraterrestrial. Sorry, Jehovah's Witness. You've been duped like the rest of us. We all know all the truths of all of that stuff. So that will have authentic history of humanity so that we can put things in proper perspective. Hopefully, some of our generations will be able to extend our lifetimes. Future generations will have the benefit of all this knowledge. We're bridges to bring all that information into the open or to create a consciousness awareness so information can be presented to humanity. You know, that's our role at this particular time, is to be a bridge for all of that. And when he talked about that holographic thing and going through the street bazaars and stuff, I don't know if any of you have watched Valerian. Look it up, Valerian. They actually have these special, like, I guess like the 3D imaging glasses, and they put these on and they're able to see into another dimension, and they're able to go and walk through these streets and these bazaars, and they see like all these different aliens there. It wasn't a very like popular movie, but men, watch it because it even has some of the beings in there. Oh my goodness, you should watch that. It's crazy. Next question. Was it Trump agreeing in 2012 to run for president in 2016 that changed all the timelines to positive regarding what the deep state tried to do? And his answer to that was, throughout the history of the human race, and this can be said for any civilization anywhere, there are moments, there are beings born that are fitted to the time to create shifts, to create moments of clarity, to take a stand, to create and lead movements to change the direction of a civilization at different times on Earth or other planets, whatever they are. He says Washington was one of those people. Gandhi, Genghis Khan, the Yellow Emperor of Japan, was one of those people. There have been many, many people throughout history. Christ, whoever that being actually was one of those people. Apollonius of Tyana, Aristotle, Leonardo da Vinci, many, many people fitted to the times. Lincoln, John Kennedy, Trump, JFK Jr., these were people fitted to the times. So many women as well. Joan of Arc, Mary Magdalene, Rosa Parks, Madame Curie. He says humans are being born to create a shift that will not change. We will have those beings in the future as well. Some of them born already, some of them not born yet, who will have their moment in time where they create a change in perspective or perception, or in a movement to help humanity steer a new course or direction. It says they're stewards. Next question. And like I said before, I think we're all going to find out who Trump really is and his family. When we find out, it's going to be mind-blowing. He's a special person, along with many other people. I think we'll find out who Lin Wood truly is and what his bloodline is. There's several other people out there. We will find out the truth. Next question. You mentioned that DNA is the cosmic currency. What can you share about the Scythian bloodlines, and why are their genetics specifically targeted for adoptions? What do they do with our DNA once harvested? His answer to that was DNA creates and carries a resonant field. It also carries with it memory. There are particular DNA structures that can be traced back to civilizations that no longer exist. They're gone for whatever reason, and very specific bloodlines or DNA resonance carries with it memories of races long gone. It says that is a particular interest of both regressives and benevolent that participate in genetic history and cataloging genetic history and lineages. Some of these races were not third density. Some of them were fourth and fifth. And these races no longer exist. For every star there is in the universe, there are just as many agendas. Okay. That's such a big question. I don't know how to give you any more clarity than that. Sometimes it has nothing to do with that being itself, but what they carry in their DNA. He says, I think the being should be asked permission, and it should be granted before anything like that is ever done. It is the custom when entering my space, he says, that permission be asked. I adhere to that, he said. I believe that's true. I believe every being has that right of sovereignty to declare their space for themselves, and that permission should be asked. Okay, last question. Zora of Hollow Earth says our sun is a hologram and it's really cold fusion, not a hot sun. We get our light from our central sun. Any input from the A's? Alex says, I would have to disagree with Zora on this, whoever she may be. I would definitely disagree. We do have a sun, a star. The energy of it does come from higher dimensions. That's the energy that's all stars through all fed dimensions. The energy that feeds, it comes from above, and ultimately as you get up the scales of the dimensions of stars, you get to the realization that all light comes from the source. All the energy comes from the source. We are source. We are never separated from source, even the atheist, he says. If you want some information about the sun, transmitting from a higher dimension, I did another previous video about that. There is a scientist called Eric Dollard, Dollard. He worked with the US Navy for a long time, and they called him like the smartest man they knew, basically. There was an interview someone did with him, you can find on YouTube. There's a bit of that interview in Yellow Rose for Texas in one of her videos called The Lie That NASA Told. But yeah, he explains the sun and how it's actually not hot at all, but it does transmit from another dimension, basically. So it's really, really interesting. It's not at all what we were told it is. So, okay. Anyways, that's it for today, guys. Hopefully I can, I'm going to watch his next video starting tonight and try and transcribe that. Hopefully I can get some out to you this week. If not, it'll be next week. I love all of you. Thank you so much for subscribing. If you like this, share this with your friends, your family. We need to get this knowledge out. Like I said, if you get a chance on a Friday, if you're home, Alex does his live webinars on brighteon.com. That's BRIGHTEON.com. And it's $12.99 if you want to get in on the live. He answers questions. So yeah, support him. He is a world of knowledge, this man, and I truly admire him. So give him some love, and thank you to all my new subscribers. I'm slowly growing my YouTube channel and my BitChute channel, so I have well over 300 people now, so I really appreciate it. You are all my soul family, okay? And I wish I could give you all a great big hug, because I know right now, oh man, I wish I could do a great big group hug, because I need a hug right now, because I'm fighting all this stuff being thrown at me right now, and it's crazy. And I saw a mug the other day. It said, fuck it, I'm going to Narnia. It's like, I love that mug. I need that mug. So I'm going to Narnia. I'm going somewhere else, and that's all I know. I'm getting out of here. Getting out of this dimension. I'm getting out of this crazy shit. Like, I just want to leave. So I love all of you. Thank you so much for watching. Just hang in there. I know it's tough, and we're just got to take it day by day. And hopefully you can get out in some sunshine, put your feet in the grass, take a walk on the beach, do something that brings joy and happiness. Love on your animals. Yeah, just do something, one little thing that makes you happy. Take a nice salt bath, something. Um, we will get through this one day at a time. And promise you, I can feel it. We will get there. We will get there. Okay. A lot of people don't think we're going to get there. That's moving way too slow. But one day, this is all going to flip. That bobber is going to flip. And we will be right where we need to be. So I love all of you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time. Bye.